Thanks folks for joining us again. This is where lantana and other materials have been poisoned here for the purpose of stopping their expansion. Now, as you can see just from this little clip, exactly how dry this material is, and this isn't even after the drought, but that's the dangers when you poison lantana and it looks like this. Now, since the bushfires, the firefighters from up north were saying that lantana was one of the greatest problems that they faced up there, and it is the same right through any national parks. And according to sources, there's 100% of the fires that were out of control in North Queensland were all on government lands, or came from government lands. You can see even that stuff that's still got some green leaf on it, how dry it is. But up further and later on in these videos, you'll see other areas where they've poisoned off and it's just tinder dry. And the grasslands that surround those areas, it's only a matter of time before somebody drops a match into it as they're driving along, and ends up killing a lot of people. Now, this particular road is Kipper Creek Road at Dundas, out near Somerset. And the actual Rural Fire Brigade wrote a letter to one of the residents, that actually said that they would not attend out here if there was a bushfire, because you'll see as these videos in this session fold out, you'll see where they actually are. The road comes down to a single lane and it's dirt, and it's absolutely wall-to-wall lantana 30 feet high on either side of the road. So the Rural Fire Brigade said there's no way in the wide world they'll be coming through that. If a fire gets started in the middle section of that road, everybody at the end of the road where there's no access to get out of there will be on their own. Now, this actual scenario like this plays out throughout Queensland, New South Wales, in enormous amounts of area, and sooner or later we are going to have an enormous tragedy, even far worse than what was up in North Queensland, and the horrendous death toll in the animals that happened there. But this isn't about environmentalists. The government continuously says, oh no, it's environmentalists on our back, so that's why we won't do clearing, and we won't do maintenance on the land. And that's why we consider lantana now to be naturalised, because we've created such an enormous problem. But we actually have lantana growing at the rate of one whole Tasmania completely covered every single year, and $20 billion increase every single year, without any operational procedures in place to meet the growth rate of the material. So we are headed for an absolute world calamity with the current governments in both federal and state politics, and the councils operating illegally, as well as all of the government departments. So with this material, once it dries out, once it's been poisoned, there is no removal of the material, so it is just waiting for that initial spark, and it will blow straight through these areas in a way that we've never ever believed possible, because a lot of this country out here now is that dry. It's just staggering as to how bad it is. Also, the other part with the lantana is that it's not only the dryness and the fact that it burns like petrol, especially after it's been poisoned, but the point is that you cannot get off the track. So if a firefighter or their equipment gets caught in an area, there's no avenue to shortcut across to another area and make an escape. This stuff makes a wall-to-wall, like you can see there. There's absolutely no way through that material. And that's what killed a lot of the animals up north. There is no escape. Once it's burning and burning into a pocket, you cannot physically go through this material. We couldn't go probably about 10 or 20 meters through this material before you'd be exhausted battling it. It's like a monstrous jungle, and there is no possibility that you could cover much ground. And then especially if you were a firefighter and you had all your gear on, there's no possibility you could scramble anywhere off the track and get very far if you're fleeing for your life. And this is what the firefighters actually wrote the letter to these the residents about, and said, you know, if somebody or a fire starts somewhere along that road, all of you, the children, the whole lot are on your own. Now that resident took that letter to the environmental minister, I believe, or it may have been the agricultural minister, but it was taken to a minister, and the minister actually got onto the council, who were refusing to do any works on Lantana out that way. When I confronted the councils, they said there's no operations in Lantana at all, exactly the same as Brisbane City Council, Moreton Bay Regional Council, Logan Council, Scenic Rim Council. All of the councils have the same policy of zero operations in Lantana. So basically you're on your own. Now, it was only because the minister was confronted with the actual letter from the Rural Fire Brigade that they actually took action, and the council went out there, and all they did was scrape and backblade the road down the sides of the road just for 100 metres. If there was a fire started there, even today, there would not be access to get through those areas. And they only scratched off the top surface, so the roots were already growing back when I was out there months ago. So they're absolutely useless how the councils and the government departments operate with Lantana. They know nothing about it. They don't know how to eradicate it. Never have, never will. They're not interested in learning. They're not interested in bothering to pay to have courses and have their people educated on how to eradicate it successfully. I've been doing it for 40 years, and it's one of the easiest weeds to eradicate, but they just don't want to pay to learn how to do it properly and then administer it. Now, it's illegal to release this material to the environment. Now, you see how close on the fence line, all along the fence line this is. That's council stuff, and the council have said to residents out there at Somerset that they don't have to clean this material up on a dirt road, but this is all over their bitumen roads as well. So it's absolutely a farce. The lies get told between those departments. But the documents I furnished that said that you cannot release this Lantana into the environment, into the watercourses or any other off your property, which is what the councils and the government have been doing all along. Now, the government's in the means of trying to bring in a risk assessment-based policy to say that they can't get on top of Lantana, so therefore they're giving it over. Look at this material all the way down there in the back, as far as you can see, and it's all everywhere. This is actually a state forest run by National Parks, and it is absolutely 50,000 acres of that, exactly like that, over 50,000 acres. It'd be a $150 million problem, conservatively speaking. And the government calls all of this low risk. And these people at the end of this road have no other avenue of getting out of that fire trap. So they're stuck there if ever a fire gets lit somewhere down this end of it. It's just amazing that this is what we are battling to bring to the people's attention. There's no way animals can escape as they did up north. The horrendous death toll needs to be seen, because it's the only time that the general public cares enough to start screaming at the government that the government needs to fix this sort of stuff up. But unfortunately, they seem to lack the motivation to do anything on a long term. See how dry this material is where it's been poisoned there, and how dry the grass is. Now you imagine the bushfires up north hitting this material, or being started in this material on the side of the road with the strong winds they had. We're just waiting for the calamity to happen, and it's just going to go across these grass plains like a bullet. And there's going to be a lot of people die as a result of this material, because it's all down the roadsides. You can't get out along these roads. It's one way in, one way out. There's not a multiple choice of getting out of there. And if it hits the grasslands, so across from this, where this is looking to the right, to the left is all grassland, like that dry grass there, running up through range country. So, we are going to see this happen. Look at this poison stuff down in the back here. That stuff burns like an absolute petrol bomb. So that's what we're faced with, illegal operations by the state and federal government, because they don't want the council spending any of the money on eradicating Lantana. All up the hillside, up the back there, all of that poison stuff in here, just waiting for something to set it alight. And the weeds at the base of these plants where they've been poisoned. This is where the government says that when they poison it, the weeds come. It's because they're doing it incorrectly. That's why the weeds are coming. They've created imbalances in the subsoil life, and that is causing the weeds to come along. So they say, well, if we take the lantana out, worse weeds show up because we never get it right, so therefore we don't want to do anything. Mechanical removal doesn't have any of those issues, and it's done, and there's no fire risk. So they've got to start looking at the things. See, lantana can't be poisoned except for 2 to 3 months of the year, whereas mechanical operations can run all year round, and there is no weeds problems after that situation. You just simply reseed, your subsoil life is all healthy and ready to go, and away the system goes again, and the lantana doesn't get a comeback into it. But this is so close to home, and what the firefighters up north suffered with massive amounts of lantana within the inside of those environments, inside the national parks and all of those areas on the government land where the fires started 100% out of control. So that is something we are going to have to deal with, because we're going to have these problems down locally in southeast Queensland, not just way up north, and not in Victoria either. They are going to be much, much closer to home, and because of poor government management and the death toll in the native animals just give up on trying to get through this material, so they just don't go there. But where you've got stock in national parks and the fires go roaring through on government lands, the death toll is horrendous, and the losses for the farmer is absolutely terrible. Look at this all through under these trees. That's what happened up there, just destroyed all the forestation. Anyway, look, that gives you a bit of an insight into how the Rural Fire Brigade refused to go out to this property. Rightly so. I back them 110%. Nobody should be putting their life in danger for the councils and for the state and federal government. Anyway, thanks. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye. That's the side of the road, is all of that lantana there. It's outside of the fence line that the council says they don't have to clean up. Look underneath the lantana there. You can see with the leaf litter, nothing has disturbed any of this material forever. No, bring the car. Bring the car. Is it? Talented man like you, I would have no problems believing you could. Nothing. Nothing's been through there and underneath those bushes, bothering to do anything under the bushes. So it just continues on one side of the road, straight through to the other, and continues north and south for hundreds of kilometres. And nobody says a word about this. Look at it here. Not that this is any different than anywhere else. And look at the leaf litter. See, that's the biggest telltale when you look at stuff like that. You can see nothing's disturbed any of that leaf litter. No bird's nests, no nothing. Just up there anyway. So long as you stay close to the edge of the road, you're right. And the buffer they cut, and then it just goes back up into the hill all the way north. Look at it over here. Just obscene what ratepayers have to put up with what they pay in taxes and pay. And this sea of this material just goes on and on and on, but nobody sees it. People don't get to see this stuff. See the levels of the infestations. You haven't got any problems with that. That'll, you know, like as long as you don't spin the tyres, this sort of material is fine. Wow.
What?
See the snake track? He looks like a decent sized snake. I don't want to find him.
Yes, it just goes on. This is what Australia looks like. Trees fall down across roads. And that's what happens. They just get chopped up to the minimum they can to get access, and then that's where they're left until something else happens. And you look at how many of these dead trees are standing here. I would be putting those suckers down before somebody wears it like this one would have. Look at it down through there. All the dead material. Nothing's disturbing the leaf litter in all those areas. There's nothing forages under this material, so therefore nothing goes in there after it chasing that material. It just keeps on going and going and going, you know. Nothing uses this area, it all gets moved off it. Can't use the water resources because half of them can't get down to those areas. Get it up through there. You know, when Mr. Scott Morrison has a look at these videos, you know, I hope he understands that I'm not the enemy, that I really don't dislike him or the people involved in a lot of the politics. But when you see what I see daily and you ask, you know, premiers and prime ministers to have a look and just see exactly what this looks like and exactly how many lies that we are told, and then they go and put that information up and they get given more money to write books, and they haven't got a clue. They are absolutely clueless as to the dealing with the Lantana. You know, something's happened here where somebody's had a hack at this material. I don't know why. It's no different than any other piece of Lantana. They haven't done it on the other side of the road. You know, it's very strange that they've done the same there with those pieces there. But yeah, it's heartbreaking when you actually see this stuff. That's why I've tried to bring it to your attention, and why I got so frustrated and upset when you're not responding to those things. But when you actually see the levels of these materials in places and what it is doing to our environment, it is so heartbreaking and so just devastating. Look at all that material up through there. It is just incredible how bad all that stuff is. And it's just exactly the mirror image of the other side of the road. And it's supposed to be waterboard in some sections of this road, and national parks in other sections of the road. So I can't tell you which one's which, but that's identical to the national park stuff that's 10 k's to the north of here, and it's exactly the same. It just continues exactly. It's like somebody painted a picture and then put it down here. You know, you judge our ecology by the quality of our watercourses and our water systems, and you see this stuff here that should never have been allowed to grow on the sides of creeks and roads, because it gets so much water, and in another month's time this stuff will be absolutely in bloom and flushing a whole new run of seeds all the way down the watercourses again, starting the whole lot over and suppressing all of our native forests, sitting at the end of a watercourse. Look, the water runs down the drainage, down the road, down the ditch, down into the spoon drain, and feeds these guys right on the top of it. Beautiful job. They couldn't have been put in a better spot, and they couldn't have the plumbing run right to their doorstep for a happier environment for these guys to flourish and to propagate even worse. Well, that's what you're looking at, Mr. Morrison. You know, I appreciate you having a chat to the councils, but we need to get public opinion on board to understand why this stuff is so devastating to our ecology. Same sort of place, sitting on the edge of the road getting fed tons and tons of water and then propagating back up in through there beautifully. And these people are leasing this land off the national parks to try and earn a living off, and this is what they're having to deal with. Why would they have done that? I would think that's higher. But you look at the level of the Lantana there, and the spoon drain runs off the side there to the low point there. It can't run uphill. Like whoever dug that, right, wants to... That's just incredible. That's the lowest point. So all the water's going to sit right there, and it's going to feed all of these Lantana plants, all in this section here, and flourish them like mad, which they don't need any flourishing. Look at that. That's like 60 feet across to the creek now. That's how wide that material is fanned out. And that's what we face. That's what we face in Australia. The councils, quite honestly, but look under there when you look back and you see, normally this is winter, so, or just the end of winter. Nothing's been under there in any shape or form, in any direction, as far as I can see back through under there. Not any of that leaf litter has been disturbed. There are no birds sitting in this material. There are no nests. And as far back as you can see, that's just Lantana, waiting for the rains to come in the creek system, in the watercourse system. This is all a watercourse. This whole thing back to that steep cliff face is a watercourse. So this sucker, look at this tree. You should be putting that sucker on the ground before it lands on somebody's head. But then there's a heap of them on both sides of the road. But look at that. Just as far as you can see back under there, and nothing's been paddling around under it. All of the Australian ecology, all of the Australian fauna has been, you know, moved out of these areas. Terrible. There's a fire break goes up through there just to separate the Lantana from one section to another section. And these people have nothing, no money to deal with this stuff. They can't deal with it. It's just on too large a scale. Yet we have the means to manage it and deal with it, you know, and take back our Australian ecology. We can't turn our backs on this sort of stuff. This is Australia-wide. Well, eastern coast-wide. Goes all the way back up the top up there. And we're still falling as the creek winds its way around and back down to a low spot down here to cross the road again. Nothing through those areas, just more and more of the same. Heartbreaking. Hello everybody, I'm Gary. I'm the Lantana expert. Lantana Removal Queensland.com.au, Lantana Removal Queensland on Facebook. Also 0449 986 880. We're just having a little bit of a walk around out here at Dundas. Just having a look at what the councils don't do. Just having a look here. All in flower, all ready to start, getting ready to go to seed. And that's, look at the size of the wild tobacco bushes down the back there. All the way down to the watercourse. And all the way down along both sides of the road. And that's what it looks like out in my world. And like I've shown so many times, look at the leaf litter. The leaf litter shows you if anything has ever tracked through that material. And as far back there as you can see, for the whole way along the road, nothing's been through that material. Let's go down. Anyway, no, just go down there, I'll catch up to you. You look all down through there. Not any leaf litter in any part of that has been disturbed. So it shows you all of the native species have long since gone. Look at it all along the sides of this high side of this bank, where the council's only hit it with the blade of the grader as they're going through. All the way down there, nothing's been disturbed or bothered. Just all exactly the same. Fences are down. You know, how does anybody make any living out of this stuff with the national parks and with the councils and this sort of conduct? And this is my world, Mr. Morrison, Prime Minister. This is why I keep writing and why I keep trying to bring it to your attention of what's happening in our world out here. And it's shocking. It is absolutely shocking to see our wildlife removed from these terrains where they would have inhabited. And national parks is supposed to be a, look at it go up the back, up the steep cliff face up the back into the national parks. And yet their system has been doing the same thing all the time. They've never ever done anything different. They burn our forestry out, it gets weaker, kills all the animals because they have to backburn to the main fire. It kills all the animals. All the fencing's down and laying everywhere. And look at it up through there. Nothing's been through that area. All through the watercourses. You know, you cannot allow this material to grow on the sides of watercourses. It's illegal to release this material to the environment. And yet you look at the levels of this infestation. 10 k's to the north of here, exactly the same as what it is here, and 100 kilometers north of that, still exactly the same as it is here. And I'm the bad guy for bringing it to people's attention. I'm the criminal. But what else can you do? You can't keep pretending. Look under the material there. Nothing has been through there. Nothing lives in there. Nothing, nothing, nothing. No birds' nests, no birds, no nothing. If they come down and eat the seeds, they'll die exactly the same as the cattle and everything else do eventually. Their liver will fail and they die. But in the meantime, they fly these seeds uphill against gravity and drop them up the top of the hill. And then what happens is all this material floods back down 10 times faster. That's how we got to where we are now. And why I say, in the very near future, we are going to quadruple this material in the next 10 years under the Department of Primary Industries, the DAF, and Biosecurity, and the Department of Natural Resources, Mines and Energy. We will quadruple it in the next 10 years under their management. Look at this stuff here. That's a watercourse. That's actually a creek. What lives in there? What lives up that side? Hey? It's just a complete wall of lantana all the way through there. You know, if they have to burn out areas, Gary, I'm the attitude adjuster, and Lantana Removal Queensland is our business. So, you know, you look at these areas, this is national parks, and you look back down through there, and I know I've showed you a lot of this already today. There's about 10 k's south of where I showed you on that other bitumen road, and this is the other area, all the way down through there as far as you can see to the creek, and then up the hillside behind. But you know, does the lantana come into the property from here, or does it come out of the property from here? You know, it's been poisoned at one stage, but it's not been very successfully poisoned. But you look at it all through these areas, you know, and these people lease these lands off the national parks, trying to make a living, and this is what they have to put up with, you know. So which way did this lantana move? Did it move up through that surface? Because I don't know whether you can see way up in those hillsides over the back there. That's all lantana up through those hillsides, up through the tops of the hill up there, and up through this surface up the back here, across the road on the other side of the road. And this is where Somerset Council says that we don't clear it, we don't deal with it when it's on dirt roads. Well, you know, there's nowhere in the legislation that says that that's true. It's a lie. You know, you look at it through here, it's swallowed up that fence down in underneath. I don't know whether you can see that timber fence all the way back under there. And it's swallowed all that up. But all of it through here, growing on the outside of the fence. Because the fence steps back there. It's growing on the outside of the fence through here. And they're not bothering to do anything with it. They just pretend it isn't here. And the infestations just continue. So, you know, whether it's a water board infestation or it's a national parks infestation, it's all being released to the environment. It doesn't matter whether you say it's the environment down there. The birds are picking it up when it seeds and then flying it to new locations up on the tops of hills. Now that's bloody steep country up the top up there, and it's down the whole surface up there. It's stealing all that good grazing land and destroying the grasses and creating erosion where it's sitting. It's a load of rubbish. It's an absolute lie to say that this material is any good for erosion control. It's absolute lie, because it suppresses the grass. Then when it's removed, there's no grass there, and there won't be any grass there for a considerable amount of time. So the erosion sets in. You end up with a hole, you end up with a divot, you end up with more problems. On the outside of the fence here, look at this side of this stuff here. You can't get access to the Telstra stuff. You can't get access to the power stuff properly. And they say, oh no, we're not responsible for where it's on a dirt road. It's an absolute lie. There is nowhere in the Biosecurity Act that it says that they can leave it wherever they choose to, and they can pick and choose what they deal with. They must start to be held accountable for these actions, for these things. You know, it's just until we start to take an interest and then start to restore our environment so the grasses come back and stabilise the soil loss. There's huge erosion losses through all of these areas because these plants are sitting here and there's no grass on those surfaces, and there's no cattle looking after those grasses and helping them to prosper. All of this just gets worse and worse and worse as time goes on, and it goes straight up the mountainside over there and then continues on for 8 to 10 k's to the north. Look at it up there, up around that corner on the outside of the fence. And the poor farmer next door battles and battles and battles to try and keep his property, you know, under control with all these noxious and toxic weeds. There's nothing. Have a look underneath that stuff. That's what makes me mad about the lies that we're told. Any animal foraging under there or going under there for any reason will have disturbed that leaf litter. And there is nothing disturbed underneath these plants. And I see that for the last 40 years. Nothing at all has even run through there to go to somewhere else or to take refuge under there. Not one leaf, not one track of dirt is moved underneath that material. Not anything. And they tell you that something uses this material for cover and to hide. What a load of rubbish. I don't see birds in it. Even if there was a bird pulled up, well, I don't see them. Never have. And never seen a flock of birds fly out of this stuff, even when it's seeding. Water's what moves this material, and it moves it extremely well. As you can see here, the higher it gets up that high country, it just floods back down out of it. So until they actually deal with those things, nothing will ever change. Thank you very much for stopping in. But boy, these national parks and these councils, SEQ Water, they all need to get serious about eradicating this material. It's just terrible. Anyway, I'm Gary, 0449 986 880. Lantana Removal Queensland on Facebook and on .com.au. Thanks for that. Drop by again soon. See you on the next one. So this is national parks on both sides of this road here, and all of that footpath area outside of the fence line, which you can just see a fence line there, is all council land. They're supposed to be responsible for this, but they tell the ratepayers of the district that they don't have to clean up Lantana on dirt roads, and there's absolutely nowhere that actually shows up. And these things are absolutely disgraceful. But which side of the road infested which side? That's a question you've got to ask yourself. Look at it way up on the hillside up there, all the way right up on the hillside, all the way across there. And then you look at Jolie's side there, and inside of that road on the other side. So how's this material not being released to the environment? On what means are they suppressing this from releasing to the environment? This is a watercourse. This runs down through this whole valley of this watercourse running down through here. Look at it go back into the bush back there all the way. It just continues as far as the eye can see for 8 to 10 kilometres north. All through here. It's amazing to see exactly how bad these things are. And how much corruption has gone on with these councils in these areas. They collect the rates for it, and they don't do any of the work at all. You look at how steep that surface is there. That's the type of stuff that we work on. And we clean all the lantana off there, and we leave the leaf litter still sitting on the hillside. Look at it all down through that area down there. And look at the Scotch thistle from all the poisoning. It's one of the things that really seems to show up a lot when they poison heavily around areas. But it's very disturbing when you see just how bad the watercourses are choked with it, all along that fence line and all through this watercourse. All of this tobacco and other vines, weeds, lantana. Just terrible. And they're just not accountable. This is a watercourse, and look at how full of the lantana it actually is. Unbelievable.